Welcome to this episode 188 of Frame and Reference. You're about to drop into a conversation between me, Kenny McMillan, and my guest, Jessica Lee Gagné, DP of Severance Season 2. Enjoy. Susie shot episode 2?
2 and 5.
2 and 5. I think it's episode 2 where I physically was like, this looks different. And then I looked up and it was her and I was like, okay, I like this, whatever this is, whatever this vibe is.
Yeah.
Not that you didn't also do a great job, but that one was just visually distinct.
It was all night, all like the outside world. Yeah. So that's quite different because we're not, usually we'll have a mix of the inside and the outside. But episode 1 this season was all innie and episode 2 is all outie.
Yeah.
That concept.
Well, hopefully they're listening. They should go find her and get a hold of her.
Well, she's in Europe, so I don't know. Her timing might be a little different.
But yeah. Should have got her when I was in Spain. I was in Spain. Again, documentary. But then I had another thought, but it's gone now. Do you watch? Yeah, you said you don't listen to filmmaking. So I've certainly kind of aged. The more I work, the less I want to hear about other people's opinions on it. Like, I'll talk to you guys because it's like, all right, I want to know your opinion. But like any online discourse, kind of not so much. But do you find yourself watching a lot of film or television when you're working or not working? You're like, is there a balance there?
No, I mean, the hours are so crazy. You don't really have time to do anything except for work. And this season, I had a lot on my plate since I was directing and DPing. There was just no free time. My weekends were just me working on the directing portion because I didn't have time to do it since I was shooting. So if I do watch something, usually it's kind of to knock me out. So I wouldn't want to, watch anything that I really cared for. I kept trying to remember if I did even watch anything this season. But you get home so late and you're just dead.
Right. That's the thing when you're saying I don't listen to podcasts. There's 3 that if you looked at my stats, you'd be like, oh, he loves these. But really, it's just those 3 have the most, I suppose, neutral voices. And I fall asleep very quickly listening. I don't think I've finished any of them.
No, I can't fall asleep to podcasts, though. Just having a voice in my head, it would probably drive me crazy as I'm trying to fall asleep.
It's certainly about sometimes you need, or I need nothing. But every once in a while, it's maybe I should just wear earplugs.
I actually do wear
it's just loud.
Yeah, for me, the sound, I live in the Old Port, which is an old part of Montreal, but it's, in the downtown area. So there's a lot of people, a lot of tourists, a lot of noise. And in the summer, I wear noise canceling earplugs because I just can't sleep with the sound. It's one of the reasons I moved out of the city while shooting Severance to Nyack, because I just wanted to be away from the noise.
Right. What was the commute like?
It was so fast because the Bronx is actually close to Nyack. So my commute from Nyack to the Bronx, where our stages are, was shorter than my commute from my apartment in Midtown, where I started season 2. That was longer because then I would get stuck in that Midtown tunnel traffic.
Right. Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if the train was actually a viable way to get to stages or anything like that?
Yeah, especially
if you have to bring gear.
Depends which stage. It really depends where you're going. It gets tricky. But I love taking the subway. I'm a big subway person.
Oh yeah. I'm lucky here in LA. I'm right next to one of the main newer trains. So, pop to downtown and stuff. Pretty easy. Same thing, hockey games. You just gotta go.
You don't want to bring your car to these situations.
No.
Even going to work for production, you kind of, sometimes you have to. In Severance, we go to all these locations that are just far out. So it gets complicated. There's no subway.
My sort of back end goal has always been to be rich enough that I could just have a driver. Doesn't have to be fancy, nothing, but just someone that I can be I would like to go somewhere and they just come and get me and it's my buddy. I hate driving.
Well, no, but you have Uber. You can use Uber.
Yeah. Oh, now we have the the automated cars,
Oh, those are
the
scary.
Waymos. No,
I
they're
saw
good.
those last time I was in town. It's very freaky.
No, they're good. They drive way better than people.
Wait, so you get in them? You can actually take them now? I thought they were
Mhm.
just like a test. Oh, there's an
No,
app.
they're yep.
Oh, I
You
didn't
just
know.
hop in, and not to make it too weird, but every girl I know is like, "Yep, I'm taking Waymo," because
Wow.
it's there's no
Okay.
driver, there's no dude trying to chat you up or sell you a screenplay or anything. It's just like,
Yeah, but then you have like a robot driving. I'm not quite ready for that. I understand it. I'm just, baby steps for me, I think.
yeah. That's an interesting dovetail. I wanted, you probably can't tell me, but why is it in Severance that everything is in the 70s, but people have like smartphones?
Oh,
Like everything's retro. Is that just an aesthetic, or is there like a plot reason for this?
it's more of an aesthetic and just to kind of like
Okay,
not associate it to like a specific year or time. They always trying to keep that really vague.
right.
Um, and they really try not to put dates on anything. It gets kind of challenging, but yeah, it's just to keep it mysterious. And also, this is a show where we can have fun with aesthetics, so we just kind of do what we want.
Well, no, so that was the thing, is like I loved it, and then after a while I was like, am I supposed to be reading into this? Because it's one of those shows where I'm always like, am I, is this something I should be paying attention to, or am I being stupid?
Never know. You never know
Yeah.
on Severance, but we like to sneak things in there. No, but it was an aesthetic thing.
Yeah. So what I was listening to some interviews you did about the first season and this one, and you had mentioned obviously switching from like Venice 1 to 2 was a difference visually, but you're ostensibly in the same places, but you wanted the look to, as you said, Ben told you to make it look better. So what, I was hoping you could kind of define for me like what the looks were in season 1 and how those changed in season 2. I know you based a lot of sort of the production design and ideas around that office book, the photo of all the offices, and
Oh,
and some other.
yeah, Lars Thunbjörk book.
Yeah, I certainly was not gonna write that down. Just
I don't know
off
that I
off
have the
audio.
yeah, so I don't even think I have the pronunciation perfectly, but yeah, that was one
Louis
of the
Faults as well.
yeah, Lynn Cohen's a big one for set design, but for me, those books are just kind of what, well, especially the Office book specifically. It's what sparked something in me in terms of excitement to work on the show, because when I found that book, I was like, okay, this I think visually is like a very interesting rendering of an office that I can like dig into, that it really connected with me, and it got me excited to start looking for references for the show, because before I was a little depleted in terms of trying to find like the right visuals. I mean, there are like amazing shows that have visuals that can, speak to it a little bit, like a Brazil kind of thing, but then you don't expect that necessarily from Severance when you're reading it. Well, not the versions that I read. Um, but yeah, that was the start of it. In terms of season 2 and the challenge of making it better, I think there were things that we did that didn't really work out and that I had to like backtrack on. Like I tried to light more in some of these spaces.
Mm.
It just didn't end up looking right. Like I even see it in episode 1 when I watch it. I can tell which shots look lit. I'm just very sensitive to things that look like they have an extra layer or like film lighting on. Like I work really, really hard with the gaffer and the grip to kind of model light in a way so that it feels, it wants to feel heightened and special and contrasty, but it wants to feel real above everything. I really don't want people kind of questioning that part of the work. And ultimately, the production design and the collaboration between the production design team and I in terms of building the ceilings for these sets and all the practicals in really, I think, was successful in season 1 and didn't need to be challenged that way. So what we would start doing is more just playing with different levels of different lights above them, and just kind of modeling the light a little bit. But I don't like to add too much because I just feel like they feel lit and then it's just weird to me.
Right. So that was kind of the main, at least for the bullpen kind of area. That was going to be my main question, because you see that a lot in like um almost any show that is kind of maybe that office style lighting, which is, as you said, like turning up, or even Adriano Goldman was telling me for Andor season 1, he had a big white room. Did you ever watch that show?
Mm-mm.
Great show. But there's a scene where it's like it's a Star Wars show, so it's
Yeah, yeah, I
well, it's
know.
the past, but not the future. But yeah, so the big white prison, same thing, shutting off parts of lights to build in contrast. Because that was one thing I wanted to talk about, like exteriors, or not exteriors, but like outy stuff, very
Mhm.
contrasty, very moody. Interior stuff, very like you would look at it and go like, I heard you talking about how it was a little scary because it was like there's no contrast, it's not cinematic, it's top. So it's just, did you even bring in negative at all?
I rarely do it. So it depends on the set. And the different EPs have kind of had different approaches with it. Sometimes I would catch them kind of doing things that felt a little too different. But in general, I try not to intervene. But I feel like MDR doesn't win by having a negative fill. Then there are sets like Cobell's office that you can really play up the negative fill. And O&D, a set that we saw more in season 1, is one where like it's more fun to kind of actually shut off parts of the set to get different lighting looks. And we did that in season 2 as well. And there's this one scene where Irving and Felicia are they're like sitting at the corner looking at the book where you see the drawings of Bert and then you see the dark hallway. I basically like just turned off the whole other half of that set for that conversation because I knew we weren't going to see there. So it was never going to like play or look weird. I don't tend to push and look for that kind of like dramatic lighting if it's not necessary, if it doesn't flow well within a scene.
Yeah, that was what I was stumbling at, was turning off blocks of light to make things, because again, I'm now that I'm, like I was saying earlier, I'm in such a documentary brain that now I'm like, how do I make everything look good? And a lot of times you're faced with that kind of room, and it's like trying to, although I did hear in an interview, were you saying that not a lot of times, but you would also like bring in like a bounce card off the ceiling to kind of just get push off the sky panels up there?
I mean, in MDR, we do that quite a bit, like the panels being dark green. Sometimes we'll just cover them in white or just add a white surface if I want to kind of mold it. One thing I really don't do often, because I use direct light a lot, but like the reflex of bouncing a light into something, which is super common for cinematographers to use, I almost never do that. I just don't have that reflex. And the amount of space usually that takes up kind of bothers me. I don't like bringing a lot of things around the actors, or even I get kind of nervous. Sometimes gaffers have to push me to go there because I feel almost self-conscious about having too many things in. So I always try to do a big part of the work in prep in terms of the set design, like participating there and making sure that the set works. Like when we built Gemma's suite, everything in there, all the details of added lighting here and there were the things that I knew I was going to need to kind of do different things.
So why, what kind of drew you away from bounce light? When certainly a lot of people use bounce. I feel like most people these days want to booklight everything, bounce through diffusion. What was there like a person that you studied or whatever that kind of drew you away from that, or is it just the physics of it?
I think it's the
physicality of it.
Yeah, physicality. You're getting it right there. It's just like just seeing the gear bothers me.
Sure.
I like shooting multiple cameras. So I'm always like trying to sneak in an extra one for the director if I can. And then when you have all of this lighting taking up so much space, it just bothers me. And there's something unreal about it that doesn't feel like it would have been that. I guess sometimes it makes really beautiful things. I don't feel like I make that kind of beauty. I think I look for other stuff, and I tend to light from outside when it's scenes that are not office scenes, when they're in like spaces with windows. That's my preferred thing to do when I can do sunlight. I love making sunlight. I love painting in that sense, and just having that time where you're just putting in random details in the background. Like that Christmas room is a good example.
That's a gorgeous shot. That I love that shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite lighting setup probably of the season in terms of.
It looks like a postcard.
That backdrop that you see out the window was drawn by our one of our illustrators that works on the show, Danielle Aviles. He also does the storyboards for me. And I love working with him. I asked him, could you just actually draw the backdrop? And I gave him a reference of like some Stefan Shore. I think it was Stefan. No, it was Stefan Shore photography. of like the suburban kind of stuff that he does with like those
I have that
bungalows.
book.
Yeah, I think there's like a little tricycle on like the cover.
Yeah. Like,
I'm like, is it Eggleston or Stephen Shore? It's Eggleston. It's Eggleston. I confuse it sometimes. The little black book.
oh, you know what? It's portraits. No.
No, it's not that. I have that book, but no, it's a little black book. I'm staring at it because it's actually right across from me over there.
I have it. I got it. Everyone, this is great television. There you go.
Yeah, Eggleston. I was saying Stephen Shore. But yeah, those kind of houses that you have in the background of that. And so he drew it and we printed it up big and that was our backdrop. We wanted to, like have that like fakeness to it. I don't know if people ever even noticed that. And outside the plane, it's the same thing. He drew clouds. And that was also often Eggleston pick the reference for that. I mean, so you're into photography. Like do you collect photo books?
I do. And you know what it was? I've told the story before, but it was like episode 3 of this podcast. So this is like 5 years ago. And I had Tim Ives on, who shot Stranger Things. And I was asking him about like what his references were for the show. And he goes, oh, well, I've got these photo books. It would take too long to show you. I was like, buddy, we got an hour. And he goes, all right, 1 second. Walks off frame and brings a stack. And for like 10, 15 minutes, he's just like walking me through all these photo books. And I was just like, I need to be buying photo books. So I ended up buying probably.
It's an expensive hobby.
It's so expensive. There's ones I want that just are not going to happen.
No, and I'm a sucker for a first edition or a signed edition. I have a whole library. I'm definitely like very obsessed with it. But
well, your major was in photography, was it not?
My major's in film production, but I have a minor in photography.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I got to, it was like when lab work was still very much a thing. I got to do 4x5 and print in the dark rooms, color and black and white. That's where really, I think the black and white, because I mean, color, there's like a limit to how much you interact with it. But in terms of processing my own negatives and being in the dark room for so many hours and years, I really was like a dark room rat. You get to a level where you really understand how film works. And funny enough, it translates so much to digital. Like you just understand the medium in another way that's more tactile. And I kind of see it, as this like physical shape because of what I was able to do in the dark room.
Yeah. Well, it must make conversations with not only your understanding of the medium, but the conversations with the colorist might be a little bit easier because you've done your own, personal dodging and burning and whatnot.
Yeah, and just talking in terms of like, take a point of this out or a point of that out. I'm definitely very intense when it comes to color matching stuff. I see things very quickly, like because I've done a lot of color darkroom as well. When you're on the wall and you're trying to get your print to look the right color, you get in and you go crazy a little bit, but like that kind of experience is really helpful.
Well, and I heard that you're not necessary because obviously there's some film work in season 2, but you didn't shoot it. It was what's his name?
Jack Goldman.
Yeah. I need to make a better note sheet because I just write names. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's so small.
It used to be a Post-it. First 4 years of this podcast, it would just, if I could fit it on a Post-it like this, I knew it would be enough.
Right.
And then,
very tiny. It looks like your font. Like wait.
I've got a font. Yeah, I do have a font. But my problem is I'll write down like there's Max's name, but it's like what did that mean? Anyway, but I saw an interview. You aren't necessarily the person who's like we need to shoot film on whatever project it may be. Is it because film is difficult? Digital, you don't have to sit there and complain about it all the time.
One thing that I know is, there's different reasons why you shoot film and why you don't. I think that you kind of have to take everything into consideration when you make that choice. The first time he came around between Ben and I in terms of like, should we shoot on film or not, was Dan Amora. And that was going to be like the first time I worked with him. I understood from reading the first episode and seeing like how much of a beast this project was that, and especially knowing that we were going to work in the wilderness and wanting to shoot many things simultaneously, like multiple cameras and stuff. It just felt like we were going to be more efficient, especially being on a television show. And I just thought myself that it would be the best way to get him like the most material. I think if we would have been shooting on film, it would have been quite restrictive. There are things that we wouldn't have gotten, especially being like the first television kind of limited series thing he was doing and working with me for the first time. It just felt like a huge leap. And it didn't feel necessary. He also hired me because when he saw Sweet Virginia, another film that I made, and it has like a pretty filmic look. And it's something that I kind of thrive in terms of making digital have a filmic feel, even though it's not necessarily exactly like film. Like I think I'm good at creating that illusion. It's something that I have worked on over the past couple years, or decade, I should say now. But Severance was a different reason. Severance, I didn't actually even feel should be shot on film because I thought the texture in my mind should have been cleaner. He mentioned it because he just has a love for the medium, you know. But it was just ironic that on my episode, I asked to shoot on film because it just made the most sense for these flashbacks. Like if you're gonna do the way of doing it in this situation without having to, you know, put some look on something, it was film. Like,
and well, and you know what's funny is those sequences popped up, and my girlfriend goes, "Ooh, they shot on film," and she never like. She's never the person who pulls up. It's usually my dumb ass who's like, you know, that looks like probably 16 or maybe 2 perf. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, well, it was 2 perf. So you got that right. It was spherical 2 perf. We shot on Master Primes. Then there was some Super 16 Bolex footage.
Which that was you, right?
The one every time it's like animals or the moon or like trees and seasons, like the snow melting, that's me because I was doing time lapses. I lived in that house, so I was doing time lapses throughout the seasons. I had this fear that no one would understand the length of time they were together and just like these moments of like casual happiness and just simple things that they weren't in the script. So it was just my way of like guaranteeing to get extras, like sneaking in extra material. Ben on the when we were doing the whole flashback unit, he actually came and shot as like a mini second unit some of the work with them outside where they're just like messing around. Yeah, everyone kind of pitched in there, but
that was another thing I do like about documentaries. We were saying is like the past that doc I was telling you about. We oftentimes stayed in the Airbnb that we were doing the interviews in, so you're not traveling to set at all. You're just like you wait for them to show up. That must have been, was that nice for you to have production show up to your house to film all that stuff, or was that a little intrusive?
No, it was very intrusive. I don't think I'd ever want to do it again. It's not like you're showering in the house where like the crew is coming. It's really weird.
Sure.
But because I was shooting 10 at the same time as we were prepping 7, it was the only way I could see the sets. Like that's not why we did it. We did it because this house was perfect for it. And it wasn't much.
Absolutely.
It was the production designer's idea. I had been living in this house for 2 years, like on and off. And I was describing the sets to him. And basically he stops me like mid conversation. He's like, "Oh, Jess, you realize we're going to shoot in your house? Like you're describing your house." And oh, I did not realize that. Okay. And it took me like a minute to register because I had to like see all the rooms in my house and be like, and then there was like a 3-story house. It was huge. Just made no sense why I was there alone, but, and it had these beautiful fireplaces. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous house. And I thought about how I wanted it to be a really intimate setting for that whole flashback world. And I realized, okay, yeah, we could actually all be together in this house. Like we can hold everything in here. And the options of like how many rooms I had and like the bathroom's so beautiful. And I even had the idea for the shower shot in that shower while taking my own shower. Yeah. And I mentioned this before on another interview, but the light, you know, how at the end when you see Mark, he realizes the cops were pulling in before he sees them in the window, the light like moves through the room. I had not thought about that. Literally, I was waiting for a DoorDash Chipotle order in the hallway, and I noticed because there was a roundabout in the front of the house, and the car that was delivering the Chipotle went around. And as it went around, the light sweeped through that like green room and that office. I was like, that's so beautiful. And it gave me the idea to put him in the office for that scene and do the same lighting effect.
Yeah. That kind of touches on something I did want to talk about, but before I'm going to make a note. Before we get there, you had mentioned your work being more filmic, even if it isn't,
Film.
celluloid driven or um I think a lot of people learning cinematography, or at least a lot of the conversations I see online or whatever, or even hear about when talking to students and stuff, is a constant pursuit of what they call the film look, and what I kind of have editorialized as um, professional. Because I don't think people necessarily, I think there's been enough conversations since digital came out, let's say in earnest in like 2010, that when we were talking about the film look in like the DVX days, we literally meant film because digital looked awful. Now that digital looks good, that phrasing has stayed, but you don't have to make it look exactly like film. So to you, what do you do to build a sort of filmic, or let's say professional look? And I guess more importantly, what don't you do? What are the things that you avoid to make sure that the you carve away at the marble and get the look you want?
I think that that's actually like a good way of looking at it, like what not to do. Um, I think it's realizing when you need to light and when you don't need to light is really important. I think you overlight and you're shooting digital, it automatically takes away, because film has such a realism feel to it. It just makes something human, and it's very hard to put this into words. We all can't really like explain the magic of it, but the naturalness that it gives, like even if you light a face in film and you're shooting film and you overlight it, somehow in the grade you can manipulate the negative in a way that it doesn't look overlit. Like it's something that like retains the quality of the skin. In digital, you can't do that. Like for some, you overlight it, it'll never look right. So I do propose to always underlight if you're comfortable with that. I take very, very big risks. Like if you would be beside the DIT and we would toggle, like here's like the look that we make for the show where we pull up a couple stops and we show you really what's being recorded, and you'd flip. Like I can't have see what I'm doing, because if they would be like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
But these cameras are so powerful, and if you want that grain to come out, you need to underexpose a lot. Like in general, we'll underexpose like a stop and a half, sometimes two, if it
that's crazy.
But we, even in white rooms, like and then Luke Taylor, the DIT who's been working with me for 7 years, he knows me now. We don't, it's easy to communicate, almost funny now. But I'll be like, pull it up more. I can tell like when I'm looking at the monitor, which cameras are not underexposed enough. And sometimes I push too far, even in digital. Like there are times where it becomes mucky, especially if I'm shooting like a longer zoom and an older zoom. There's this one close up on Adam when he's explaining to Britt how to use the computer in season 1. It's like a long lens shot on him, and I remember like seeing it in the grade. I'm like, okay, that was not going to really hold up. But you make those mistakes, and that's when you're like on the right edge to make it feel like something, because by bringing out the grain, you're kind of you're bringing out texture, you're making it tactile. But yeah, not overlighting, I think, is really key. Understanding the camera you're working with, so like having a good period of testing where you can push the camera and see. And one of my rules, I think, is that when I see an image and I'm looking at it and it's not kind of like on the edge of making me excited and scared, then there's something wrong. Like I love the feeling of being unsure that I may be making a mistake in the exposure. Like I kind of get a high off of that. So I don't know. I love that.
Well, and that kind of this is working great. That kind of brings me back to what I said. That makes me think of something. Again, you haven't heard this podcast. Very bouncy. Just there's no flow to it at all.
Like as I'm the same in my conversation, and I'm moving around a lot today. I don't know why. I'm like in my
wonderful.
Chair.
I know. I got some movement too. But that was in a bunch of interviews I heard you in. There was a lot of conversation I felt about sort of the way you felt about production, not specifically this production, but just in general. Like I remember there was talking about like your perception of time, or your opinion on time, which I had just read a book like last year called The Order of Time. which was a great. I don't if you haven't read that. From what I heard,
I'm going to write it down because I'm obsessed with books about time. The Order of Time. I like the idea,
yeah.
though. It really applies to episode 7.
So well, basically, it's a book about uh, theoretical physics, but it's very digestible. But it does state like basically any equation that includes time in it, there's a way to remove the time variable and still get the same answer. So I guess the thesis of it is that time isn't the thing.
I don't think it's.
So this is what I wanted to dig in with you a little bit about.
Okay.
What do you mean by that? Because I think I agree with you, but I want to get your opinion on it.
Well, 7's one thing, and that's one conversation. But like, I think that in time, you can talk about it in many ways. I just see it as our mind to understand what's happening and to be able to compute what this all is. It needs time, because it's like, okay, so we can use the idea of just one person's lifetime from the moment they're born to their death, if we want to contain it in something. And, movies are amazing because you can kind of actually just, if you picture a movie of someone's life and it's this big, long piece of celluloid that you like unroll, and you can kind of rise above it and see all of these scenes within it, that perspective on time is possible where you're outside of it and you can kind of scroll through it. But in what I believe, and I don't know, I have no proof of any of this really. I just have like my personal experiences which have pushed me to see time differently. And have like very, very interstellar kind of like experiences when you can kind of like see it from above. You can't process it because it's too many events happening all at once. It's just too many things. But in reality, our mind is like honing in on a scene. So you can imagine that you take this film and you hone in on one scene, one frame, one moment, and to understand reality, like to perceive it as an experience, your mind makes time up so that like it focuses on each individual moment, like, okay, this is now, but now technically is infinite, there's no end and beginning to now.
Right.
It can get a little weird, but I'm trying to explain it in the most pictorial way.
Yeah, well, so there's two things. One, you definitely need to read The Order of Time because I think you flip the fuck out because it's exactly what you're talking about. But from like a physics perspective, and two, I think like a lot of your Alan Wattses or whatever, your Eastern sort of philosophy folks have a similar view of time, maybe phrased different ways. But discovering all that for myself, because again, I agree with you. Did make it hard to, for a brief moment, care. I think there was a bit of, I guess I wouldn't call it ego death, but there's a difference between nothing matters and, oh, nothing matters. It's it's an outlook on life that I think, because what I wanted to get at, what you were talking about earlier was like, when you're talking about like the edge of fear, I guess, when you're looking at a frame and it's not exciting you or whatever, that you had mentioned a bunch about how like, you alluded to maybe a fear-based life or needing courage to direct, to go back to season 2, whatever. And I was wondering if you could kind of elucidate maybe what you were feeling in those things, that the overcoming that fear to go on and do, the show is already successful. It should be pretty easy, you would think, to, oh yeah, I'll come back and do, but there was like something keeping you from there. And for a moment there, you chose, not to, and then obviously did. But I was kind of wondering if you could talk to me about what those blocks were and what in your life was kind of holding you there.
I'll talk about it, but I just kind of want to mention the thing about, because to me this is even more interesting than the show, just talking about when you get to a place in your life where you understand that nothing matters, like the one question that I've had to ask myself, because I got to that point before deciding to do season 2, and it's what pushed me into directing. When you live an experience that takes you out of your reality, that's so powerful and so mind-blowing that you're just like, oh, what is this? Like, oh, how does this even work? What's really going on? I kind of had to like rediscover a purpose. I had to like re-understand why I was here and what I was doing. And I started asking myself the questions of destiny versus free will, and how that works. And into that specific question, does it even matter if you do anything? If your ego, do you want to just like sit and meditate all day? And I don't know, maybe like for me, it's not the path. For some people, it's going to be the path because they're trying to achieve something else. But I still, that is like, those are the main questions I ask myself and I'm testing that right now in my own reality in terms of trying certain things. And fear, like when you move through it, it's the most interesting things will happen in your like direct experience in terms of like changing that material life, right? So I'm questioning that. It's like, if there is a destiny and if I'm meant to be doing this one specific thing, then I should be carried to it, right? But I don't know. I feel like the free will element really is important, that you have to move through kind of like things that make your body physically uncomfortable. And for me, directing, just because of the way I was brought up and also things that I think I carried from past generations, it wasn't natural or normal to be the captain of the ship. You know, I was more comfortable being behind.
Well, and so I'm glad you said that, because that's almost exactly what I wanted to dig in about, is like being a DP is already, to some people, you know, a lot of people think like, oh, that shouldn't be me. You know, that's too, but you're already in a position of shooting feature, shooting television, whatever. And just like, I think from the outside, a lot of people could think like, that's just one extra step to director, which obviously,
Yeah.
it's not just like that much of a step. But from the outside, you know, what made you look at yourself kind of from that perspective of like, oh, it is achievable. You know, I've already done all this.
Well, I didn't know it was achievable. But like that, I had, you know, maybe now I think that, but before, first of all, like cinematographers are of a very giving nature in a way. I mean, they might have very different attitudes, you know, you might have very different types of personalities, but there's an innate part of them that wants to give and that feels comfortable in that setting. And that's actually quite beautiful. Like, cause like the direct thing is really different. It's two different energies. And I think when I was about to do it, I didn't really understand what it felt like to direct, because I had never had that experience. I had never lived that. So for me, understanding that I could do it, understanding that I wanted it and understanding that I could do it are two different things. Understanding that I wanted it happened in prep, because I started being really happy and I started smiling more, and, you know, people noticed, and I was like, well, I feel like I deserve in my life to be happier, and I should do these things just even for myself. And then personal experiences that I lived, and that I started being interested by things like time and consciousness and these themes. It's almost like it gave me a reason to want to be a filmmaker, because I found like this like path thing I was so passionate about that I wanted to talk about. And also just getting in touch with my own emotions, which I hadn't been for a very long time in my own life. And then moving through it, doing it, surviving.
Right.
Seeing that people liked it, that was one thing. But then when I watched the episode in the mix, like the mix is that final moment when you wrap up something, you know, it's the kind of like this like seal that goes on things. Like I knew what the color grade was going to look like, and I understand visual effects and all of that, but the mix and that sensorial experience that you have when you're listening to sound, I cried when I saw the episode, because I couldn't believe that I had done something like this. Like to me, that I was able, because I really orchestrated it, you know, and I had spent so many years not even thinking because it was unconscious, you know, just it kind of hurt me in a way to realize that I didn't let myself do that. But if I look at it now with like much more space and perspective, everything that I put into my work in this industry, everything that I've done, and the people that I've worked with, technicians to directors and producers, you know, whether it was positive or negative experiences, because there were all kinds, has made me the person I am. And like, when you look at time and you look at like the movie of your life, like all of this, like if you take all the scenes, you take every single frame, you cut it and you stack it up in a stack of frames and you look through it, like it makes up the entire thing. And
Yeah.
I'm here right now with you, and I'm this person just because of all of that.
Well, and it speaks exactly to your point about doing things that make you uncomfortable, not uncomfortable, truly dangerous, but putting yourself out there, maybe I suppose emotionally, gives you those experiences that make you that person. If you stay stagnant, that film of your life looks like a photo, not a
There's no,
film. You know.
yeah, there's no evolution, there's no
Yeah.
change. And that's what's beautiful, is that we have the potential to change. I believe everyone can change. And you need to have perspective. Sometimes perspective is it's a luxury, it's like it's a privilege. Not everyone gets the same level of perspective or gets all the same opportunities, but you can't get stuck on that. You have to kind of like think outside of that.
Well, and that's why I'm a big proponent of uh, meditation, not necessarily in the strictest sense, but just the ability to not do something and sit quietly for an extended period of time. Because everyone has that joke about like how you'll be talking to someone and then you turn around to go like walk up the stairs and you're like, oh, I should have said that. Like that's meditation basically in a nutshell, is like whenever you're away from whatever it may be, a shot, a movie, any work, anything, that's where the stuff gets made, not when you're when you're doing it. That's when it's being assembled. It's being made when you're away from it, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's challenging to meditate. It's not easy. I try to have a practice. I go in and out of it. But to be honest, if you want to work outside of time, like if you want to step outside of your timeline, meditating is the simplest way in my mind to get there, even though it's hard. And like personally, I have a lot of thoughts, and my thoughts have controlled my way. I couldn't hear before. There were so many simultaneously. It was just like noise, and it was just subconsciously moving me around. When I worked with my subconscious and really, dug to kind of like reprogram a lot of that stuff, I was able to kind of clean out the voices. Now I hear them, but I'm like, oh, that's my grandfather's voice. Oh, that's my grandmother's
Yes.
voice. Like I know whose voice it is, or my father's or my mother's. And it's funny. Like you can identify them. You just can't really listen to them.
That was such a big lesson for this was therapy, not meditation, but identifying whose voice is talking, because this is something that I always have to tell some of my friends who haven't gone to therapy, is like when you're the only one in here, right?
Mm.
So when you tell yourself no or whatever it may be, that's someone else's voice using your mouth. Oh, did this just
I just
die?
lost you.
Oh no. Hold
What?
on.
That's the
Once
weirdest thing.
I know they don't want me to tell the secret. The battery died. 1 second.
Is it because you have one of those cameras?
Yeah, it's a C100 Mark II.
Oh, you have a fancy camera here.
Oh no, I started the podcast over the pandemic, and they I had just bought a C500. So for like the first year and a half, it was a C500 Mark II.
You do documentaries with the C300? I feel like that's where, when I was doing documentary, that's what was.
I used to. Now it's the C500 Mark II and C70. If I'm bringing my own stuff, it's those ones. But yeah, listening to identifying whose voice it is that is using your sort of voice. Yeah, whose language is using your voice, I think is incredibly important, because yeah, like you said, your grandfather who was maybe, told you that you couldn't do anything, or your friend who told you could do anything. And identifying like, oh, I choose to listen to that person, not, Johnny who was mean to me or whatever.
Yeah. You have to acknowledge, I say don't listen to it. It's like acknowledge it. You hear it. It's so much easier said than done. But like just now I hear the voice and I know I don't feel comfortable doing something, but like that's where I'm gonna go. And I'm just like, okay, we are acknowledging that we're afraid of sending this email, just as simple as that is. And that for me is like a daily thing of like, because I don't want to bother this person, or I don't want this person to not like me. But now we're just like send. And like for me, directing that is like, you're not going to care what other people think, just going to do it. And like to do an episode like this with the kind of crazy stuff we did, And first of all, like Severance is that. Severance was made in this vacuum of like not knowing if people were going to like it. And so much went into it. You know, there's such a big risk, but I really do believe when there's a big risk, the payoff can be so much bigger.
Right. Yeah, because that's another thing, right? Like if you know exactly what you're doing, aside from the danger of complacency, like is it fun? You know, like, and not that we're all out here trying to have fun, but like if there's you want to, especially in a creative medium, you want to feel something when you're doing it. You know, especially if you're trying to make other people feel something.
Yeah, I think that's the only interesting work when you're feeling real things and when you're in the flow of creating stuff. I get really excited, even as a cinematographer on the show, when we have these huge setups at Lumen, and I get to like wear the headset and talk to 3 or 4 different camera crews sometimes at the same time, and it's like an orchestra. It's like we're an army of like cameras moving around, and someone's on a lift over there, someone's on 200 feet of track over here, and we're shooting like the sequence where Mark is running into the office, and it's all these like kind of like 70s fun shots. Like that for me is where I have the most fun because I'm just like talking to everyone and just making sure everyone's getting the best thing. And then you're like, okay, it's the next camera waiting for us inside ready. And everyone's moving and everyone feels like they have a purpose. And there are many beautiful moments on Severance that are like that, where we all kind of like really come together and like move forward.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too. I just thought about it with you saying that is like stillness is scary. Like organizing everyone and having a bunch of chaos. I think that's why anyone's really drawn to production is like,
oh, there's an addiction there.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like sitting still for a long time is terrifying, but like being in a room where you're having to direct, you know, as a department head, directing people and getting all the bees buzzing in the right direction is like, that feels good.
You should try Vipassana retreat. I did that a couple of weeks ago. Do you know what that is?
So what now?
Vipassana meditation. Does that ring a bell?
No.
I did this a couple weeks ago. Really, this is really fresh for me. But I went 2 weeks to this center where you know, you don't have they take your phone away from you. You have no means of communicating. You're not allowed to look at people or talk to anyone for 2 weeks, and you meditate 10 hours a day, starting at 4:30 in the morning, and you end at like 9. It's like it's so hard. It's really hard, but you learn things, you know, and the things we've been talking about over the past hour, like you already seem like, I feel like you would at least be curious to live that experience and see.
Certainly. 2 weeks is a investment.
10 days. It's 10 days.
10 days. 10 days.
Doesn't count the day so it's 12 days because you like arrive, there's a whole initiation, and the day that you leave, there's like this unpacking thing. So it's like you have to plan for like 2 weeks.
Gotcha. I mean, yeah, I had a bunch of people when I moved back to LA after college in like 15 years ago or whatever it was, 10 years ago, 12, that were all trying to get me into the transcendental meditation. And I was like, yeah, because I liked the idea of sort of like helping myself in the way that I needed to be helped. But I, you know, the punk rock side of me is like, I can't be joining an institution or, you know, I'm not gonna, I don't want to be part of a team.
But I'm trying to do those kinds of things. There is kind of a little bit of a like, oh, this feels like a sector. It feels like this or that, whatever.
Right.
But I mean, everyone will find their thing and whatever brings them in. I just think that kind of experience specifically, the speaking behind, like the theory behind it, some of it, you know, in terms of like where it came from, this like societal,
right?
It was brought up is like specific to a time and place. But when you get down to the core essence of it, it's very simple and it makes sense. It's just kind of taking away all thought. You're not supposed to have thoughts, or you're not supposed to visualize. So you can't even do those basic things. And it's all about just sensations, not emotions. Like what are you feeling? And you can't move. There's like 3 hours out of the 10 hours that you're not allowed to move. Like literally, you're not allowed to move like your finger. You know, so it's kind of
right.
Crazy.
So I did the float tanks instead, which is kind of similar, but those are nice. They are. I liked it.
Less painful than sitting up for 10 hours a day.
Yeah,
it's really painful.
And I've got no core strength, so that's, you know, people are probably going to want to me to ask you about cinematography.
Yeah, sorry, we went off on a tangent.
No, that's the intent of this pod, not this episode, but the podcast in general, was to. I think it's so important to obviously, when I mentioned, Adriano in the White Room and the thing, every episode I've noticed more and more that the tools, not even the physical tools, but just the mechanisms for which we light things, frame things, tend to be the same and can be applied in different scenarios. It's the type of person that I think doesn't get enough attention who is suited for this job. Because I think a lot of people want to work in film. I don't know if they have the temperament for it or the personality for it a lot of times. Not that it's a good or bad, like it's not a value judgment. It's just some people would rather quietly work at home than work in the busy environment, or, don't realize that people think about time or, these types of things outside of the work, so I do actually prefer fleshing out the individual more than talking about cinematography. But I will say, while doing my due diligence, researching you and the show and stuff, and also being a massive fan of the show, every single time I would just look up your name and Severance, there'd be like a Reddit thread of just like 100 people going like, give this woman an Emmy. Like there's a lot of people seem to love you on the internet. So I don't,
I'm afraid of the internet, so
don't go on it. I'm starting to back off myself, and I grew up on the internet. I can't.
I mean, I think it's an amazing thing. I'm just
I think it's run its course.
Really? Yeah.
It's
well, I don't actually want a phone. That's one of my life goals, is to not have a phone. But that's, like you and your driver situation. I don't,
Yeah.
You have to get to a certain place to be able to not have a phone. We're not there yet.
I'm worse. I have an Android, and I guess you can only be in the G&E department if you have an Android. Everyone else is pissed off at me, and they're like, get an iPhone. I'm like, are you going to buy it? And they're like,
I don't know. Anyone should be allowed to have whatever communication device that they have, but it's a lot.
What I'm saying.
The reflexes that are built in. Actually, what was really interesting coming out of the meditation retreat was when I got my phone back, my eyes had to readjust to look. I couldn't even pressing the buttons, and just something was off. It's like I was missing. I didn't know how to type anymore, and I couldn't see at that distance. It was just weird.
That's honestly why I used to poo-poo the smartwatch, but I do actually like it, because you can in it set what type of notification you get. So only text messages or whatever, only phone, whatever. And so you can leave the phone elsewhere. And then if you need to know something's happening, emails, I get 400 emails a day. I do not. And it's just, and so I'll be sitting here editing or whatever. It's because I'm a journalist. Technically, I haven't written in a while. I need to get on it. But so I'm just on all these PR lists and stuff. And if every time my phone buzzes and I'm like, oh, is that something important? And it's an email. 2 seconds later, I'm on Instagram. Right? It's just it's a distraction.
Automatic. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas with the smartwatch, it's don't have emails pop up. Only text messages, of which I get very few because I'm not on iMessage. See, it's a self-limited. No one wants to call or text me because I'm green. But that's a fear I'm going to have to get over. Okay.
Phones do a human's job almost. It's crazy. If you get rid of your phone, you need someone to replace the phone. Well, it depends what industry you're in, but I would need to do that job.
Yeah. Okay. Cinematography questions. We talked about the MDR area and all that. We kind of know, but all of the nighttime stuff, more importantly, the daytime stuff. So we've got the Ortbo. God, how am I remembering these? This is great. The Ortbo and stuff. How are you shaping the light in those sunny exteriors? Snow in general is very difficult to shoot. How are you getting the look you want out of those exteriors? And then we'll get into night in a minute.
But I control the schedule.
I did hear in an interview kind of an 80s nightmare if it was a different project.
The AD needs to just realize that it's going to be the order that I want. No, yeah. Episode 8 and 4 were built like that. Even episode 8, before we went out to shoot it, maybe a couple days before we had a production meeting, and I completely flipped the schedule. Obviously, I do it in a way that I know works for everyone. I understand moving parts really well. So usually, and I we work with the departments to make sure it works for them and that we're not like throwing anyone under the bus. But when I know what the weather is going to be, I flip everything to the right place. And Ben knows that I work like that, and he wants things to look good, so he's always on board. I always check with him when something's a little trickier because I just want to make sure that it won't affect, the energy that he wants on set. But like for some of those sequences in episode 8 when we're in Newfoundland, the Blue Hour stuff when they're leaving, like that's shot over more than one day, and it's an orchestra of people moving in and out and doing things. And one crazy story that happened, that pickup truck we were doing, like we have like 2 takes basically per setup because we rehearse before we shoot. Well, we rehearse with camera. So we'll actually even rehearse with lens changes. And then we'll have a big conversation where I'll like just stand in front of everyone and be like, okay, first setup is this camera's there, that camera's there, this is happening. We recap, we have like everything's marked out. Everyone knows.
That's
like
smart.
Where they're going. Well, you have to do that with Blue Hour stuff. But then when we got to the pickup truck driving away, the thing broke down.
Nope.
So literally the entire crew, we had 2 pickup trucks. The other one was like down the hill, like far away. So we have like lighting installed in this thing. So literally the crew's pushing that truck out of the way. Someone's bringing the other truck. And we have like 10 minutes to do this. I wish there was a video of it because it was just hilarious. It was a bunch of Canadians pushing trucks around. I was panicking. Definitely. There's a couple of moments where I was very stressed this season. That was one of them.
Well, pardon me. But the that episode specifically was gorgeous, and I think it does speak to how important timing is. I think a lot of what makes this quote unquote cinematic image is literally just getting the sun where you want it.
Yeah. There's nothing to beat that. Also working with second units, and understanding what to offload from main unit and second unit. That's something I'll do and cover and make sure that, what I know we cannot achieve, I just dump on second unit. And I'm like, okay, they need to do that. Or, I'll make the recommendations of like where we need it, where we need extra camera crews and what that means. This year, one of the fun things, Ryan Smith, our location manager on the show, directed the second unit stuff. He had always impressed me with his like photography and basically had talked to me about it. And I was like, hey, why not? And then we proposed him to Ben, and it just made sense because he's the one who originally like physically flew to Newfoundland. So he knew where everything was, and like to me that would make sense that he would be doing it. But yeah, it's understanding time and the resources that you have and when it's too much, when you're going to fail. We ride the edge a lot of that, Ben and I, and since Escape at Dannemora, we've been working like that. And there's this one sequence where Paul Dano and Benicio are on like Benicio del Toro are at the top of a mountain and they're looking at the prison far away, and it's shot in a real Blue Hour. We're on the top of a mountain. Like I cannot bring lighting there. This is not like The Revenant. We're not able to like helicopter in anything, it's just that. I'm not saying that they lit really on The Revenant, but it's a different world. And this was very wooded.
Right.
We rehearsed 3 different setups with multiple cameras. So he would have like, I don't know if he had maybe a total of like 6 or 7 shots for this sequence. And, but that last take, man, there was not another take after that. It's just, that's it. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, can I go again? I'm like, I don't know if you see him. You can go again. I don't know if you're going to see anything. But those are the kinds of conversations we're having.
Yeah. So for all the Newfoundland stuff, was it literally just, or even the Ortho stuff? Are you just pure timing, or are you bringing in any shaping or anything like that?
There's a couple moments where we brought in some stuff. I mean, for like the night campfire thing, there's a little bit of accent stuff and just like lighting up a little bit of the forest, but not much. There's one moment where we snuck in a little light for Helly getting closer to the waterfall. We did have to relight. So that sequence took 3 days to shoot. It was a huge sequence. And like, just
the waterfall part, or just the whole thing?
The waterfall, the water. But just the stunts of it, they're hanging off the side of a cliff. Like these guys are like harnessed in, like there's nothing no one's moving fast. Right. We are all being safe and chill. And then there's snow that's added, and a lot of the snow is enhanced in VFX. A lot of the snow from episode 4 was and 8 as well was very enhanced in VFX. But there's a base there and we're working like in next to this little, not lake, but pond. And it's a tricky.
The largest pond in the world.
Oh, yeah. Was it the largest waterfall? I can't.
He says waterfall, yeah.
But anyway, so you're on rocks. It's tricky. You can't move fast. So we had 3 days to do that. And it was going to be impossible to have the same like lighting looks. We had sun, clouds, everything. And then you have to shoot outside at the time when you lose the sun over the cliff. I was going to have to like deal with that being like a bunch of different things. So some things were relit in post because they wouldn't match.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just impossible.
I've been talking about that with a few DPs now. Is like some of the tools in Resolve, and probably Baselight too, but are just the ability to maybe not accurately, but realistically relight a shot are phenomenal now, and they're all more or less automatic versus you trying to just have to window everything and like shape every. Now it's like you just drop one little thing. A light bulb should be here. And it's like, yeah, we got it. Shadows.
I think on fast shots that works really well. Like when you hold a shot for a really long time, you kind of like want to like do it well, but like do it in real. But it's just you can't do it. And it's as a DP, it's so important to help your director understand when it's worth it or not. Like there are many times where like if Ben's like, oh, well, you don't want to like add light or whatever or something. And I'm like, I will do that or take this down. Like it's too bright. I'm like, that's in 2 seconds in post. We get the shot now and do not worry about that. We got that. Tom Pool's going to save the day. Like it's understanding where your colorist can do something like that and not have to bring out like a 20 by, like you have to constantly make choices like that.
Yeah. So for daytime, we're mostly letting daylight play. For the nighttime stuff, how did you avoid? Because one comment I saw again online was a lot of people were applauding the fact that while there's a lot of darkness, you can still see. I have an argument for a lot of people like everything's dark, you can't see shit. Is that it's your TV and you're watching at noon? The viewing. I could go on a whole rant about that, but
well, we don't want to do dark for dark. We like contrast. So Severance is a show about like the physicality of the image. Like it has to have a shape. So there's always kind of like a search for that. I don't think it's ever really about like just being dark. Like you can do a piece like that. Like you can do that kind of filmmaking. Like it's not what we just don't like flat. So that would ultimately be quite flat, and that's not the look of Severance.
Right. Because I'm thinking like with Mark's apartment, right? You can see in most of the shadows, but it looks like there's only like, maybe a Titan tube tucked up somewhere, and that's kind of it. Are you just relying on the sensitivity of the sensor, or is there like more?
No, well, every scenario is different. Every setup has kind of a different approach. To me, it always stems from what's the space and the architecture giving you, where are their practicals? Like, or if you're outside and like, okay, there's a street lamp, we're going to work around that, or we'll create it when we need something. Most of the time I'm just taking things away, like just turning things off. But then there's also when you're lighting it, you're trying stuff, you're turning some stuff on, some stuff off. And then when you kind of like the tableau, then you can come in and like add specific sources with like some great so that it just focuses where you need it when where the actor is going to hit. I don't love to light like that for daytime because you don't really need to, but for nighttime you do kind of need to add a little thing here and there if ever it's like he's just can't see anything, and just understanding like what the image is, like what are you trying to say. Sometimes the silhouette is actually really evocative and makes sense, but sometimes you need to see the actor's face.
Yeah. Well, and when you're given like Devin's house being that like Frank Lloyd Wright kind of setup, like that's it's like anytime you put a pool of light, everything around is going to look gorgeous. It's like, how much gorgeosity do I put into this?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, everyone wants to, that's an actual house. Like everyone wants to live in that house.
Yeah. All right. Well, they're telling me I have to let you go, but I would love to have you back on to keep chatting because I feel like we could uncover some great truths or solve a mystery. I don't know, but
yeah, we're like the secret of time. Let's go.
Yeah. We'll have to. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back on next time you're free or something, especially if you're not working and have the time.
Of course. That's been fun to talk about other stuff also.
Yeah, well, the goal of the podcast kind of is, a lot of times y'all are on press tours, so it's like, let's not have you answer the same 5 questions every time.
I mean, I really try hard not to give the same answers. Sometimes it's just tough. And then sometimes you're like, well, I'm not gonna I can't tell this in a different way. Anyways, whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, stay in touch. And I have to say, gotta be my favorite show of the past 8 years. So
That's
it's
great.
you guys and the first season of Westworld, I think, are my top three television
First
shows.
season of Westworld, that was a good one. I
Top,
mean,
top tier
production
television.
design on that was insane also.
Yeah. Sucks they just kind of. Anyway, I'll let you go. Please stay in touch, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production, produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to frameandrefpod.com and clicking on the Patreon button. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.